Hello and welcome to the JackCast, your Swansea City podcast. It's a welcome back and a happy new year from me, Steve, and Gitto. And it's a happy new Podbean. Welcome back from us as well. We had a bit of a hiatus from there this season as we ventured down other routes, but we're back, and it's thanks to the incredible generosity of you guys. We can't thank you enough. We're completely taken aback by the response we got to our appeal, if you like, on Twitter last week. Within 4 hours, we'd hit our target, and it's meant that we've been able to purchase the ongoing subscription and get back where we can get it on iTunes and everywhere else that you like to subscribe to the podcast from. So first and foremost, a massive thank you from the three of us to everyone who's contributed, and we left a link up there on our Twitter bio. So if you go onto our Twitter page, the JackCast, and click on our bio, you'll see the link there, because we've actually gone over the amount we wanted to raise. So we're going to leave it up there, and any money you donate now will go towards a charity, which we'll be putting out. It'll be up to you guys to decide where it goes, but we'll put it to a local charity. So again, thank you so much for that. And let's get on to the podcast, shall we? As you may have guessed already, I'm joined by Steve Carroll and Gitto Llewellyn. Evening, both.
Good evening.
Evening.
And a happy new year to you both as well. We haven't actually had a podcast for about half a month now. We've given ourselves a bit of Christmas time off. In fact, the last podcast we did, correct me if I'm wrong, was the review of the Cardiff game, which is probably a good way to end 2020 on anyway, to be honest with you. So maybe we could say that it was planned, but it wasn't. Just things got in the way. So we got a whole lot of games to review this time round, and we'll start off by going chronologically, and we'll go back to the game after it. And Steve, I remember saying on the podcast that Cardiff game, the threat of the Derby one being after the Lord Mayor's show. And it was exactly that, and it was what we were worried about, wasn't it? Because it's happened in the past with us as well. We focus all our energy, and rightly so, by the way. We focus all our energy on that game against Cardiff, and then afterwards, you just can't get ourselves up for the game after it. And we found that in Derby, which was probably our worst performance, if not this season, maybe under Steve Cooper completely. It was really, really poor, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was awful. I can't even think of a positive from it, to be honest. But the way you have to look at it is everybody does have the odd shocker, and that was ours, really. But yeah, funny one. You can get it sometimes, can't you? The after the Lord Mayor's show effect, and I think it happened on that day, didn't it? Just one of those where you've just got to go. It happens. Make sure you put it right in the next game, and make sure it's a one-off. So. Yeah, you can overlook performances like that occasionally, I think. But if it was to become the norm, then I think we'd all be losing the plot, really. But yeah, a bad night at the office. No other way of looking at it, really.
Yeah, I think the writing was on the wall early doors. Everyone was probably just looking at it going, how is one's going to start now after that, Gitto? And then Colin Kazim Richards, a name from the past, has just found his way one-on-one through a little bit of jiggery-pokery through the box, and he's poked it in past Woodman after 3 or 4 minutes. It was a horrendous start, and it got worse from there.
Yeah, it wasn't like us at all, was it? Once you see us defending like that, you think, well, that's not very Swansea-like this season, and it set the tone. Nobody had a good game. Everybody was off. Everybody just looked really tired, and just looked like they needed a break, if I'm being honest. And it was definitely our worst performance of the season. I think in fairness, most fans kind of reacted to it as the one-off that it was, kind of thinking, okay, this is really bad, but this is not how we play most of the time. So I don't think there was too much overreaction to the result, thankfully. But at the same time, it was an awful game to watch, a pretty painful one to sit through.
Yeah, it was. And if that game was perhaps a start, as you mean to go on in a negative sense for the Swans, well, the games were coming thick and fast. They still are, of course, this season. And a few days later, we played Barnsley, Steve, and we actually reacted in the perfect way by scoring very early in just the second minute. Lowe was the quickest to react to the far post from our header back into the box. And set the tone for the day, and a good win against not too shabby Barnsley team, perhaps one of the better teams we've seen this season as well.
Yeah, it was a good win. If I'm honest, I can't really go into a lot of detail at all about this game because I did watch it, but my stream was very jumpy. Nothing to do with the club, I don't think. I think it was my internet. But yeah, quite often you would see the ball would be passed, and then a few seconds later it would be somewhere else. So yeah, I can't make a great deal of comment about that, but it was important to bounce back, wasn't it, after the Derby game, really? And yeah, I think Barnsley, they're not the worst team in the league by any stretch. They've been quite decent this season. So yeah, it was important to get that win, and obviously another clean sheet as well, which is becoming our major strong point, really. So yeah, I was very pleased with it, but I can't say I enjoyed the game because watching a game where the stream is dodgy, I'm sure everyone can relate to. It's not the most enjoyable thing.
Oh God, no! If there was any questions over whether the Cardiff game was the flash in the pan for Jamal Lowe, Gitto, he's quickly followed that up a couple of games later with that reaction finish, and maybe started to sow the seeds for what we've seen since.
Yeah, we've got the first mention of Jamal Lowe, but it won't be the last in this podcast. Yeah, I mean, again, like you said, getting off the mark early, right place, right time. It's the kind of thing that Lowe's been doing the whole time, getting into kind of dangerous positions. It's just that his finishing hasn't been at it. I mean, he couldn't really miss this one, even though I guess you could say he's missed some pretty bad similar ones previous to that. But again, I think it's just an example of Lowe just doing the kind of things that he's been doing all season, but actually putting it in the back of the net now. And that comes from confidence, I think. And that's the big difference, really, between Lowe now and Lowe before the Cardiff matches. He's got that taste for goals. He's got the belief that he is going to score. So he's still he's still putting in the hard yards that he was before. But now, he's getting a goal return. And the thing is, when we take the lead in games, we do not do not let up, and throughout that match against Barnsley, there was never any doubt really that we were going to win that game. Barnsley created absolutely nothing. Woodman, I don't think was ever stretched. Defense just stood very strong against a good side. It was an awful game to watch, I'll be honest. I mean, the fact that we scored early really ruined it for any neutrals because we could then just sit back and protect our lead. We had no interest in playing football. The pass completion rates for that game are astonishingly bad. The Swans had 39% pass success, which is unheard of as far as I'm concerned. I don't think I can ever remember the Swans having such a low pass completion rate. Pretty much, you're not far off there. 2 in every 3 passes going astray. And Barnsley weren't much better. They only had 49%, which is desperately poor as well, but nowhere near as bad as our figures. So if you want an idea of how bad the game was, just look at those statistics. The pitch takes some of the blame, but it can't take all of the blame for that kind of passing.
I think the Barnsley manager said in post-match that Swansea didn't have any interest in playing football. There was only one team out there. And I do think you are right, but I do think we did set out to not try and play football on that pitch, which by the end was horrendous. We may as well have asked for a move to Cum Level Park or something like that instead for the game because the pitch was in such poor state that it wasn't fit for any team. Stoke would have struggled to enjoy that back in the heyday, but having us try and I'd like to be kind and say that we tried to adapt to the circumstances, but the amount of long balls we played, Gitto, was horrendous, and it was just hoofing it up the pitch, not even attempting to play football. Yeah, I'm not surprised by those pass completion rates at all. And you get a goal early doors, and then you benefit from a unfortunate own goal early in the second half. Then, and the situation is is decided, because as you say, we very, very rarely give up leads, and we don't concede enough to do that, unfortunately. And it's just a nice comforting feeling when we score first, isn't it? Well, if Woodman was very quiet in the game against Barnsley, he certainly was the busier of the two in the first half against QPR in the following game on Boxing Day, Steve. Could say on the balance of play, QPR probably deserved to go in ahead, and we were thinking, well, let's get to half-time 0-0 and take it from there. But just before half-time, Andre reacts quickest to the ball bouncing off the post, and once Swansea 1-0 up, and as Gito said, when we go 1-0 up, we rarely give it up. So we went on to win 2-0 after the fantastic goal scored by Jamal Lowe, assisted by Matt Grimes early in the second half. Showing every bit the sort of confidence which perhaps he was lacking a month earlier against Brentford and Norwich. And it's just it was an odd one, but it was a very welcome win, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think we need to send a little gift in the post to Cardiff goalkeeper Alex Smithies, because that fumble early on in that game that broke Lowe's goal duck seems to have had a lasting effect, shall we say? But yeah, we didn't play that well, I don't think, in that QPR game in the first half, especially. I've got to be honest. I think Woodman did make some great saves, one from a header in particular. And then we had offered very little, really. And then, as you say, we got that goal against the run of play. And then in the second half, really, I mean, Lowe, once he gets in with that lovely pass from Grimes, you just felt he was going to score. And about a few weeks before that, you would have thought he definitely isn't going to score. He's a changed man, really, isn't he? So, and as you say, once we're 2-0 up, this team doesn't really let those situations slip. But, I did feel a little bit for QPR, because I think they're definitely not the worst team we've seen this season. But I think they let themselves down in both boxes, really. And that's why we ended up taking the points. But we've definitely seen worse sides than them, I would say. And we did ride our luck, especially in the first half a little bit.
I felt a bit guilty, I'll be honest, because QPR, it was a bit embarrassing almost, the fact that we went in ahead of the break, because QPR played a lot of good football, created some good chances. They just could not find that piece of quality to get the ball into the back of the net, and that final touch, really.
As well, didn't they, with the headers and someone they really should have scored.
They were the architects of their own downfall as well, because not just in their wastefulness, but there was a defensive mix-up for IU's goal, so they didn't help themselves. But still, if you were looking, at the play in that first half, there's no doubt who the better team was. And if you were to ask a neutral observer, which one of these teams do you think is the one challenging for promotion to the Premier League? They probably have said neither, but they probably say the QPR were the most likely. I mean, we weren't good. We were really bad in that first half. Throughout the game, actually, we weren't very good. Even defensively, I thought we rode our luck. Against Barnsley, we were good defensively and we limited their chances. Against QPR, we were a lot more open. We weren't winning the headers in the way we usually do. And we weren't giving Freddie Woodman as good a protection. It wasn't a good performance by the team. And it was one of those where we got a little bit lucky. We scored 2 goals at very good times. Lowe's obviously was a fantastic one. But that was enough to see it out against a team that was low on confidence and just things not going their way, really.
It's interesting you finish on that, because that was literally what I was about to say there. It's often the way, isn't it, when you're at the bottom or you're down there, where you're finding that maybe the rub of the green isn't there with you, and you can dominate games, but you just can't get it right in both boxes. And I think that game really did sum up that, really, in that QPR had none of the luck, and we got it when it mattered most. I read on your Twitter feed, Gito, a very interesting point following the next game, which was the 30th of December. Don't worry, guys, we're almost in this year now when we're reviewing these games, so we're nearly there. But a very interesting point, which was that looking at the games this season, when we've played our best football, more often than not, we've ended up without taking the result we deserved, and it's the games which we've been playing quite poorly in, like the QPRs we've just talked about, where we're picking up the points. And Reading was exactly that, wasn't it? It was the new pitch. It was something where we were just looking forward to trying to get back to some sort of football after that horrendous display, as you say, against Barnsley in terms of passing. And the results suggest that, or maybe we didn't really hit it off, but my God, did we? It was a fantastic display, Gitto, wasn't it? And I just think the game deserved a Swans win, and we put in the performance, one of the performances of the season, definitely, and thoroughly deserved to take the spoils from that, and just couldn't find the telling moment.
Yeah, not for the first time this season. We're kind of frustrated because the Swans have really upped their game. I mean, there was chalk and cheese when you compare the performance against Reading with the performances against Barnsley, Derby, and QPR. Really, a couple of those games, we weren't really at the races massively for any of them. Definitely way off our best. And then, it's a good sign that when then a team in the top six came to the Liberty, we really did up our game. I don't know how much credit we can give to the Liberty pitch, but it definitely helped us with our passing, which was much sharper. We're talking about the remarkably low pass success rate against Barnsley. Against Reading, I think it was up in the 80s again. We had possession, but we used it well. We created lots of different kinds of chances. And it was just one of those nights where it just wouldn't go in for us. There was obviously a really bad miss in the first half of Gay, and just a couple of chances where it's not quite far enough in the corner. It's just within the reach of the keeper, who had an unusually fantastic game for Reading. And it was just one of those really frustrating nights, much like the ones early in the season against Brentford and Norwich, where we could not get that goal which would have given us what we deserved from the match.
You said it there. There was one moment in the second half where you had what looked like a point-blank header, Steve, which was clawed off the line by the goalkeeper. He had an absolute worldie, didn't he? We played really good football that night, and just didn't feel like we were going to score against him. He was in incredible form.
Yeah, he was. You do get that sometimes, anyway. You face a goalkeeper who just refuses to be beaten, and unfortunately we came up against one, didn't we, against Reading. I think that's the main reason why. Well, it's got to be that they came away with anything, because we were by far the better side. It was a very encouraging performance, which did make it all the more frustrating, really, that we didn't get the result that we deserve. But you just have to tell yourself, really, that in general, if you do play that way, that more often than not you will get what you deserve. And it is frustrating, though. We can't deny it. We've sat here loads of times, I think, especially when Graham Potter was in charge, when we were talking about games, you're looking and thinking, how the hell have we not won that? And probably hasn't happened as much under Steve Cooper, but it did happen against Reading, didn't it? And they weren't really a side that impressed me a huge amount, so I'll take that from it. That certainly in terms of if we're going to be in a battle for automatic promotion, I don't think that they are, based on that.
Yeah, it's always nice to see when you're coming up against your fellow contenders, aren't you? Where do we stand? Where are we in the big mix-up here? And we haven't let ourselves down this season. Obviously, we're right up there now. And whenever we've come up against the bigger teams, we've more than held our own, and perhaps I feel deserve to win more than we have of those games. Hopefully that fortune has changed, however, Gitto, following the game yesterday, which was Saturday, against Watford, one of the ones expected to be up there at the end of the season. Got a new manager bounce come in. He's had a great first result, and you're thinking, is this going to lie? Is he still in his honeymoon period? And then Watford take the lead, and you're wondering, are we going to be facing the brunt of this new manager bounce and start the year off with a defeat? However, and what is rather unusual for this Swansea team is the fight back was incredible. Well, lovely football again through the game, but a thoroughly deserved win, and the manner of the victory perhaps left a wider smile on Swan supporters' faces, because as much as we say when we score first, we very rarely give up the lead. I'd like to see the stats on when we concede, because our bounce back ability, to coin a phrase, isn't something we've really been renowned for it over the years, have we? So to see us come back like that, it was very impressive and pleasing.
Yeah, I mean that is what makes this the biggest win of the season for me. I mean, not just the fact that we've won against a team in the top six for the first time this season, but the fact that we've come from behind to win for the first time this season, and against one of the toughest defenses in the division as well. I think they'd only conceded 15 goals before this match. We'd only conceded 12, and our statistics are outrageous, really, for this time of the season. So when we fell behind, you think, oh, this is going to be difficult. The only other time this season we've fallen behind and then gone on to get anything out of the game was the 1-1 draw away against Coventry. We don't fall behind often, but when we do, we struggle to respond. We're not that kind of team, really, or at least we thought we weren't that kind of team, because actually in this match, Reading took the lead, but we came straight back at them. We've been playing well before the goal, and we played well after the goal. We kept attacking down that right wing where Ngakia, who's usually a right back, was playing left back for Watford, and we exposed it for all it's worth. I mean, he was taken off at half-time for a reason. Put in a series of good crosses into the box. Just Watford centre-backs defended them well, but we created a few really good chances, couldn't quite get it past Foster, and then we're going to say his name again, it's Jamal Lowe. The ball played into him from Corey Smith, who was my man of the match. I thought he was fantastic. And right before half-time, at such a good time to score, you just see Lowe shifted onto his right foot really well. And it's just a beautiful looking finish. It didn't have much pace on it, but it kind of curls perfectly against that foot of the post and goes in. It's an absolutely beautiful goal. And not only is Lowe scoring goals now, quite a few of them are seriously eye-catching. They're finishes of real quality. And to score just before half-time, like he did there, it was just a huge moment in the game, real turning point. And actually, as soon as we got one back, I was thinking, well, come on, let's go. We've been the better team in this first half. Let's go out in the second half and finish the job. And obviously, Steve, that's what we did.
Yeah, it was. I mean, as you say, really, we were a bit unlucky to have gone 1-0 down, but then we definitely deserved that equaliser. We'd started to turn the screw, and we late on in the first half, and then when it finally come, as you described well there. But again, in the second half, we were the better side. I mean, we had that goal disallowed for offside. Impossible to tell if it was or not, purely because obviously they didn't give us the type of camera angle that we wanted. But in the end, the goal came from what was a brilliant cross, really, from Corey Smith. It was one of those where the goalkeeper doesn't know whether he can come for it or not, and I think that's the uncertainty then that caused him to make a mistake. And obviously Lowe then has just headed in, which I wouldn't have expected to have seen a headed goal from him, but the form he's in at the moment, that's what seems to be happening. So it was very encouraging. And we did start to sit a little bit too deep for my liking, I would say, after that in the second half. But once Gibbs White come on, then he gave us that little bit of extra, didn't he? And I don't think Watford really ever put us under too much pressure, did they, for an equaliser?
No, they didn't. And you go back to Jamal Lowe, because he deserves his own section in this podcast at the moment, doesn't he? He's scoring all sorts of goals now, Gitto, isn't he? And you mentioned there's some eye-catching ones there. He scored the close range one early on against Barnsley. He scored a header on the weekend against Watford. So he's managing to get himself in these positions where he can score from most places in the opposition final third, and it's great because there's no one way that you can deal with that. Then or show him on this side, or don't let him get a yard on you. But with the pace he's got as well, and his confidence is flowing, it's a real purple patch for him.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not just a matter of marking him up in the 6-yard box, because if he has to then drift outside the box, then he's dangerous from long range as well, as he's shown. He's just full of confidence, as we said earlier, and all the things that he was doing well earlier on in the season, but not getting the reward, they're now yielding goals for him. And like I said earlier, he was getting himself into dangerous goal scoring positions earlier on in the season. He was getting chances, he just wasn't putting them away. But he was doing all the other good work that a striker needs to do. Well, now that he's just got his scoring boots on, I mean, we're seeing exactly how good a player he is. It always helps if you've got a striker that can find the back of the net. I know that some clubs go up without that prolific goal scorer up front. But if Jamal Lowe can keep his scoring rate at anything close to what it is right now for the rest of the season, then he's going to be a heck of an asset for us. And he is a difficult player to play against. And it wasn't just the goals against Watford. There were a couple of occasions where he was picking up the ball and backing himself to go past several players, and he'd be pushing himself in between. Like, there was one time when there were a cluster of 4 yellow shirts around him trying to get the ball off of him, and in the end they ended up fouling him. He's a difficult player to play against because he's far more than just a goal scorer. He is happy to put in that work, dropping deep, dropping wide, dribbling, taking on players, using his strength. He's a total pain in the backside if you got to defend against him because of his versatility. And that's because obviously he was a winger for so much of his career, and now, starting off at Wigan and more so now since arriving with us, he's playing as a striker. He's got so many different attributes to his game that he's a really difficult player to play against. And if you were to ask who's been kind of player of the month over the past month, I don't think there's any doubt that he would get the nod. He's always been good, but he looks totally transformed now, and he's taken his game to a new level.
It's so weird, that confidence in a footballer. It's like no other industry where you can just like have your talent and there be that, and that's what you've got. But footballer, confidence is a difference between it's everything, isn't it? Several weeks ago, you were looking at him, and he was in the same sorts of positions as he's getting in now, but his touch was heavy, or he wouldn't get around a man he was clearly faster than, but he didn't have the belief that he was going to do it. Now he's looking like he can take on the world. I don't know if either of you recall, it was just this passing moment in the game against Watford, but it was on the near touchline in the corner flag, and he showed incredible feet. I think he won a corner out of it, but it was just like twinkle toes out there, and he was just like flicking it between his legs and dragging it back, and there was 2 players out there with him, and they just couldn't get it off him. It was in the first half, and it was just like I was watching that, and that was the moment for me when I was looking at that going, he's on top of the world right now. I'd be surprised if there was a point in his career where he felt more invincible than he does right now, because he's just playing with that exuberant confidence. And it's great to see because, we've become heavily reliant the last 2 years on Andre Ayew, and so to see someone take that burden off him, and needed to as well, because Ayew's not quite getting the rub of it himself at the moment, and it's fantastic to see. But that, as Gito said at the start, do you agree, Steve, that was the best win of the season?
It's got to be, really, isn't it? Because you look at it, it's the best team that we've beaten so far. We were behind in a game. Obviously, we had the frustration of the Reading game where we played really well and we didn't win. And then you think, well, we've conceded now in this one after a reasonable start, and our things starting to go against us. But we managed to dig it out. And I mean, you look at it from the other point of view. Brentford obviously didn't play, for example. I know Bournemouth were playing later, and it was just a chance for us to take advantage of that situation, and we did that. We put a bit of pressure then onto some of the other sides. So, yeah, for me, definitely the biggest win of the season.
Yeah, really good. So that brings us up to date, gents. We're actually now, at the current day, finally caught up on everything.
We're actually back in 2021.
Can you believe? Can you believe we aren't talking about the good old days anymore? We're back in up to date, and we'll try and keep there for as long as we can. Let's move on now. This is going to take a little bit longer than usual because I appreciate, due to the issues we had with accessibility online, there will be fair few of you out there who want to quote a JackCast podcast this season, and so this new for this season is a middle section of the podcast where we did have Twitter questions previously, and we do infrequently have them still. But at the moment, what we're doing is we're chucking a bit of fun in the middle. Is a quiz part of it, a 10-15 minute section. There's 3 parts. There's this one's a toughie. I'm going to go with the name, guys. I've kept it up all season, and I see no reason to drop it now, even though you both think it's absolutely terrible. There's a quiz between Gito and Steve. It goes on through the whole season at the moment. I'll give you the up-to-date scores in a second. There are 5 questions in the quiz. The first 4 are worth 2 points for a correct answer, -1 for an incorrect answer. So it's about making sure when you shout your name to give an answer, you know what it is. But if you get it wrong, it's also given over to a no-risk bonus point for the other player. So there's a bit of rules about it, but we've kind of nailed it down. And the final question of the quiz is a who am I, where I pluck a former Swan out of the archives and give 3 clues to his identity. I have kind of tweaked these rules a little bit, gents, just to get your head up to speed. If you get it after the first clue, that's worth 5 points, as we've been doing this season. The second clue is worth 4, and the third clue is worth 3. The change in the rules to this is that there is no penalty now for getting it wrong on this one, but you can both have 1 free guess per clue.
Oof.
So it's worth shouting out a name, even if you think, it might not be him. So, and because of the points on offer, it can change all in the final question. So if you have been listening all season, you'll know that Steve is winning at the moment. It's 3-2 on the scoreboard, but crucially, Gitto won last time out we did this. So the form is with you, Gitto. How confident are you feeling?
Oh, I'm like Jamal Lowe. I feel like everything I touch is going to turn into goals now. I mean, like the pessimism of old Gitto is gone.
Yeah, if you had listened, Gitto was convinced he was going to finish on 0. And so to get 1 was his kind of, I've broken my duck. It was controversial circumstances, Steve. We wanted to go to VAR for some of the questions because you believed they were wrong, which is, on review, was probably correct. But Gitto got off the mark, and now there's no stopping him. And you worried, or you think you're back to winning ways this week?
Just got to focus on my own game, not worry about the opposition.
Right, so we'll introduce the rules to each of the quizzes first, and so everyone gets what's going on for the next 10 minutes or so, and then we'll go ahead and do them. So we'll come back to this one's a toughie in a little bit. For now, let's introduce the second part of the quiz section. It's called Battle Jacks. Now, this one is a little bit of a twist on games that have existed in other podcasts and radio shows previously. This is, I give a statement, and then I flip a coin. Whoever wins the coin toss between Steve or Gitto gets to choose whether they'd like to argue for that statement or against it. They both then get 45 seconds to make their argument, and then after the pod is all finished and edited up, Dan, our editor, will upload the responses, put them on Twitter, and Paul, then you get to decide who's made the best argument. It is, as always, worth reiterating at this point, it's not necessarily their actual opinion. Because if they lose the coin toss, they have to make the argument which is left to them by the other person. So if I say, for example, Swansea City are the number 1 team in Wales, and Gitto wins the coin toss, he's going to naturally make the argument for that statement, which would have left us with the incredibly humorous situation where Steve would then have to argue against it, even though he'd definitely be doing so through gritted teeth. So that's the game, and that's the fun of it. So that's part 2. And part 3, as we come to it, is unpopular opinion. Now, this is we take it in turns, where we feature a statement which we do have to hold this belief on this one, that many would disagree with. The question is, will we all kind of come to an understanding of where they're going with it, or do we just shut it down straight off and go, that's stupid, that's ridiculous? We discuss it for a few minutes. It's quite good to listen to. It's quite interesting to hear all the different opinions on it. But this one is more of a factual one. One of us has to come forward and say, well, this is actually what I think. And most people will probably disagree with me, but he says, put your cards on the table. And as we're just going through the rules and explanations for this part of the podcast, I'll do it this week. I've got one prepared, and so we'll come back to that in a few minutes, and Stephen Gitto then can tell me how ridiculous the statement is or not. Right, gents, did those rules make sense? Because I
was going to say, have you come up for air yet?
Unfortunately, I kind of pre-scripted this because I knew how important it was, just to get it right for those who haven't been able to listen this season. So we'll go back to the very start of this jargon now. This one's a toughie. This is our quiz. Remember, 5 questions, 4 at the start, then a big point scorer at the end. Steve and Gitto, you know all about it, and I'm ready to start if you two are. So, just to remind you all, to get an answer of a question, you need to shout out your name, and whoever gets in there first gets a shot at it. Remember, 2 points to get it correct, -1 to get it incorrect, and a free shot at a bonus point for the other player if you do get it wrong. So, potential there for a bit of fun. Right, question 1. Which current Swan joined Everton's academy at 11, left there at 20, and spent...
Steve.
Go on.
I think it's Jake Bidwell.
Well done. Yeah, Jake Bidwell was the correct answer. The end of that question was going to be, he spent his career in London before joining us, which would have probably gifted that to you as well then, Gitto. Question 2. According to WhoScored.com, how many minutes has Jay Fulton played in the Championship this season? So multiple choice. Is it A, 1228 minutes? Is it B, 1680 minutes? Or is it C, 1935 minutes?
Gitto.
Go on then, Gitto.
I'll go for the lowest one.
First one, 1228?
Yeah.
Correct. Well done. So we're all even going into question 3. Question 3 then. Sorry for my voice going up there. Form table time. How many points have Swansea picked up in the last 6 games? Again, multiple choice. A, 10 points. B, 11 points. Or C, 13 points?
Steve. It's 13.
Damn it.
It is 13, yes. Steve, you nudged out into the lead here. Question 4. Put these 3 players in order of their age from oldest to youngest. Freddie Woodman, Liam Cullen, Joel Latibaudier.
Gitto.
Go on then, Gitto.
I think Woodman's the oldest, Latibodier's in the... Oh! I think I've cocked this up. I think it's Woodman, Cullen and Latibaudier.
Is that your final answer?
I'll put that final answer.
Oh, he's got away with it at the death there. Yes.
I quickly realised Cullen isn't quite as young as I thought it was.
Yeah, and Latibaudier is very young. Yes, if you wanted to know, Woodman's 23, Cullen is 21, and Latibaudier is just 20. So, this is fun because we're going into the final question, neck and neck. Remember, as I say, no penalty now for coming in after each of the clues. So have a free stab at it. 5 points. It doesn't really matter as long as you end up getting this right now. It's the win. So let's get on to the who am I. So clue number 1 is I'm now 45 years old. I was born in 1975 in Middlesbrough. Does anyone want to take a stab?
Middlesbrough.
Any Northeast players of the past, Steve?
Paul Corner.
Not Paul Corner, no. So you're frozen out for this clue.
I'm trying to think of any from the Northeast. The only player I can think of with Middlesbrough connections is Marvin Emnes, and it's quite obviously not him.
I mean, he could have a dodgy birth certificate, but no, I don't think.
Let's just say Marvin Emnes, just to get it out the way, and it won't be on my mind then.
It's not Marvin Emnes. Banish him from your brain. Right, clue 2 then, worth 4 points, as I say. As long as it's right, you win the game. After spending 5 years at the Swans, playing 139 games, I left in 2001 to join Kidderminster.
Steve.
Go on then, Steve.
I think it's Richie Appleby.
Oh, it is. It's Richie Appleby for the win. So, Steve, congratulations. Back in control of the quiz. It's 4-2. Gitto, commiserations. You fought it to the death.
Yeah, I was never going to get that one. I don't think Steve's knowledge of turn of the millennium is superior to mine. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, if you've listened through the season, there is a preference to a certain era of Swans players that perhaps I've gone with so far. So we'll try and mix that up a little bit, I suppose. Right, second part of it. Bear with me a second. I'm just going to grab a coin, or makeshift coin, as it were. This is for Battle Jacks now. The statement that I'm about to read out, and then I'll flip a coin to decide. Steve, I think it's your turn to decide which head or tails. The statement I will make is Swans need to sign a number 9 in January. Heads or tails, Steve?
Tails.
It's heads. So, Gitto, you're left with a decision to make. Do you want to argue for that statement or against it?
I would like to argue that the Swans do not need a number 9.
You're arguing against, and Steve, that means that you have to argue for it. As you were arguing for it, Steve, you go first.
Okay.
45 seconds on the clock. Your time starts now.
I would say that we definitely need a number 9. I would say that Andreu and Jamal Lowe have done very well, but they're not going to stay fit or in form for the entire season. So we definitely need to bring a striker in. Gyökeres hasn't done the business. I think Liam Cullen needs a loan spell where he can beef himself up a little bit. We definitely need to add more goals to this team. I would say that has been probably a little bit of a weakness of ours, whereas defensively we've been superb. So if we could bring in a number 9, I think that would make all the difference in the season running. So yes, from my point of view, we definitely do need to sign a number 9 to bolster our attacking options.
Okay, he's finishing a few seconds early, but that's fine because he's getting a good argument. Gitto, you've chosen to argue against it, so 45 seconds, off you go.
Yeah, basically, we don't actually need a number 9, contrary to popular opinion. This could easily be my unpopular opinion. Jamal Lowe has stepped up. He's scored 8 goals already this season, which is pretty good by any standards. Add to that the fact that Andre Ayew, as a second striker, has scored 8 goals. 16 goals, that's not a bad return. And when you combine that then with a rock-solid defence, it's a winning formula. People think you need a 20-goal striker to go up from the Championship. Actually, you don't. A lot of teams go up without them. I think West Brom's top scorer last season only had 10 goals. So there's this myth that you need this 20-goal season striker to go up. It's not actually true. And there is a risk that because Jamal Lowe... Oh, what?
So it's 45 seconds. That's fly by, doesn't it? When you filled with content there. So
is there a decimal point between that 4 and 5? Honestly,
I robbed the listeners of your argument there, or the tail end of your argument.
Wow.
Plenty of.
I think I got the main points across, but still.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Dan, I mean, you've got the 45 seconds of Gitto, you were the 37 seconds of Steve. Maybe you should have asked Steve if you could borrow his 8 seconds and get it on
yeah. On Twitter. I'll buy them off you, Steve.
There's
Hey, I'll charge you through the roof.
So Dan is going to, when we edit up this podcast now, he's going to put this up, the 45 seconds of both Gitto and Steve's arguments there, and then a poll with it to say, well, who do you think made the best argument? So look out for that on Twitter, where all our correspondence goes through usually. There is another part to the competitive element to this podcast, which I'll bring in now as we're at the midway point of the season. We actually did predictions before the start of the season. It was where we were thought was going to go up and who was going to go down. Needless to say, I fared worst in this so far. Steve, you had Norwich and Watford to go up automatically, not beyond the realms of possibility, of course, still, and Brentford to come up through the playoffs. Gitto, you had Watford and Norwich in that order, with Brentford as well. I had Watford and Norwich the same order as Gitto, but I had Derby to go up through the playoffs.
Oh,
that is looking like a fucking horrendous call, to be honest with you. The bottom 3, Steve, you went for Sheffield Wednesday, Wickham and Rotherham. 2 of them are there and one's on the cusp. Gitto, you went with Wickham, Rotherham and Birmingham. Again, Birmingham, the only one not in there, and they aren't too far off. And I went with Sheffield Wednesday, Birmingham and Rotherham. So again, not quite as close as you two, but that's not as horrendous as the Derby playoff shout that I made at the start of the season. So horrendous.
I don't know why our listeners should pay any attention to your unpopular opinions when you've got those kind of predictions going on.
Well, here's my saving grace, because we've been doing score predictions through the season as well. And this is where
we don't need to listen to score predictions. That's irrelevant.
Just plucking them out of thin air.
Well, I mean, we're looking at it and we're saying that you're discrediting my runaway lead on the prediction lead so far, on the prediction league so far. Although I will say I was updating the scores recently, earlier on today, of the recent results, and wow, it's been quite a poor run for all of us over the past 6 weeks or so. Really, really poor predictions. Very few points to be handed out. But as it stands at the moment, the table looks like this. I'm top. This is how the prediction league works, by the way, just to add more confusion. If you get the right result, then it's worth a point. And if you get both the right result and the right score, then it's worth 2. So we've been... Was it worth 3? No, it was worth 3, isn't it? Yeah. It's worth 3 points. So that's what we've been doing through the season. I've got the result and score 4 times, and the result just 4 times. So I've got 16 points. Gitto, you're second with 11 points, and Steve, you're bottom of the table in relegation zone there on 10 points, but just a point off Gitto. So we'll do a prediction of the games coming up and add to that as needs be. But like I say, recently it's been really poor scoring from all of us. So we need to get back on that, I think. So let's move on, shall we? Let's move on to news and what we've got to discuss. So first of all, let's discuss something we mentioned a little bit earlier on, Gitto, which was the introduction of the new pitch, which I don't think it can be overstated how important that was, because the old pitch was resembling more and more like they didn't even care anymore. It was like being patched up for a while. It looked poor, and you were looking on the stream and going, God, that looks quite patchy there. And in the last couple of games, it looked like the groundsmen had just furloughed themselves. They weren't interested at all. No discredit to the people working on it, but it got so bad, and it was reported that there was a severe disease running through the grass, the old turf, and it needed to come up. There was no saving it, and the new pitch has gone down, and it hasn't had a lot of bedding time, but so far so good.
Yeah, fair play to them for making the decision. It's easy to say the decision needed to be made, but completely overhauling and replacing your turf halfway through a season, especially when the schedule's as crowded as it's been this year, that's no mean feat. That comes with a cost as well for a club that's struggled financially over the last few years, and has taken a hit like everybody else from COVID. It was a big decision to be made, and we're hoping that it pays dividends. But the early evidence suggests that it may well do. The pitch in its former state was the worst by far that it's ever been. The Liberty Stadium's pitch has always been pristine, so to see it that way was really shocking. The one thing I have noticed since we actually relayed it is how many other pitches across the country are beginning to look a little bit like ours was, and seem to be on that kind of road to ruin that we were on. And I just wonder if we're going to see other clubs possibly follow suit over the coming weeks and months if their pitches become really terrible as well, and start losing all their grass. Are we going to see a lot of pitches being relayed this season? It's going to be interesting, but it definitely seems like it's paid dividends, and hopefully it'll help us avoid the kind of passing statistics we saw against Barnsley.
Yeah, it is good to see the new pitch in action. Steve, it's January, which means the transfer window is open. What sort of movement do you think there'll be with the Swans this season? What's in the press at the moment? How do you see this one playing out for the Swans over the next month?
Well, we're being linked to 1 or 2, aren't we? So I think a striker will come in, and I think that needs to happen. Gyökeres hasn't been great. Sending him back or Brighton recalling him, I'd say, would probably be a good thing for everybody, because he's just not going to get a chance here, is he? I think that's fairly obvious. I think Casey Palmer might go back as well, because now that Gibbs White is fit, Palmer wasn't getting a great deal of action anyway. Now he's going to get even less. So I think those two might go. And then you're looking at, like I say, a striker coming in, I would think. So Yeah, we've been linked to a couple of them. Max Waters is one from Crawley. Can't say I know a great deal about him. Michael Obafemi is the other one we seem to be linked to a loan from Southampton. He played quite a bit last season, but not so much this. So a loan move for him probably would make sense for everybody, really. So, I think you will see a striker come in. I certainly hope so, because I think that's what we need.
Contrary to my my assertion in unpopular opinion, Gito, I think one thing you have to say, and I don't think there's any contest in this, is Cooper rather doesn't.
I'll take the credit if you want to give.
Give you the credit. Cooper doesn't seem to have a blind spot when it comes to players. He'll always have these managers. You go, God, why the hell is he picking him again? But Cooper seems to know his best team, know the best players and what they offer. And so generally looking at that team, the best players are on the pitch most of the time when they can be. And so for that reason, I'm very much with Steve's opinion here. Cooper's not a fan of Gyökeres. He's given very little time to Liam Cullen. Maybe he feels like an opportunity may arise in January to send him out on loan. And so I can see those pieces of the jigsaw go in, unusually for the Swans, go in the way we expect them to, because he seems to see it very similarly to us.
Yeah, I mean, Gyökeres just hasn't had an impact since he's arrived here. Palmer's had a bit more impact, but he just hasn't played that much, and that seems to suggest that Cooper's not a fan. And when not necessarily not a fan, but I think he just prefers using Danda. That's clear. And but even Danda these days is second choice behind one of the three central midfielders who and in fairness, that system's really working at the moment with Grimes, Smith, and Fulton. So, if he's sticking with three in the middle, three out, more defensive central midfielders in games, Palmer's behind Danda anyway. We've now got Morgan Gibbs-White coming back, who's really, you'd expect, going to be taking one of those slots as well. Palmer suddenly falls far down the pecking order, and I just don't see where the games are going to be coming for him. So Bristol City have had a bit of an injury crisis in the first half of the season. I'd be surprised if he stays here beyond January. So I expect him to go back. Gyökeres the same, just to free up a loan space really for somebody else, because we did it last season. I guess it wasn't our choice, obviously, but Sam Surridge went back at midway through the season, but it allowed us to bring others in on loan for the second half of the season. We're happy to do that if need be, and that's because we have these contacts now under Cooper. He's able to attract some of the best young prospects at some of the Premier League's top academies. So if it means us saying sorry, we're sending one lone player back, and so that we can get another, then we don't mind doing that.
Surridge's replacement didn't do bad for himself in the end, did he? As it happens, but it's a nice problem to have. And I don't think we'd part a fight with the Casey Palmer situation, Steve, because of what's happening. And it's not just that, if we had 2 or 3 loan spaces free, we might be like, oh, are you going to use him? Because, we'll use him here. He'd be a better player for it. And I think he's a useful player at this level. I think he can offer something. But because we've maxed out the loans, and we're looking to bring players in, and inevitably the main bulk of it is going to be looking at loans again. I think he's actually going to cause harm unless we can, send Gyökeres back to Brighton, which I hope is another move we can make. But the adjustments there would mean that we'd actually benefit from letting someone like Casey Palmer in a position which we are fairly well stocked. And like you say, even when Morgan Gibbs-White was out injured, he wasn't playing every week anyway. So it's not as if we were just losing a first teamer and hoping that his replacement hits the ground running. So I can't see any real concerns over that. But it will be a nice problem for Cooper to have if he does bring in a striker or 2. If Gyökeres goes back and Liam Cullen goes out on loan, then perhaps Max Waters and Obafemi do come in as one as a purchase, one as a loan. Then we can have a situation where he has a decision to make. You've got lower AU, who's suddenly looking like a formidable partnership up there, working hard. Both of them worked their absolute socks off, but they both got goals. Gito said already 16 goals this season between them. It's not going to set the world alight, but at the same time, it's a certain, and their own Low in particular has only now started finding that sort of form. So where's that going to leave him? Morgan Gibbs-White comes into the team now. One of the best players in this division on what little we've seen of him. He has phenomenal talent. I hope that he keeps that up, but he's got to find his way into that team as well. So there's some big decisions for Cooper to be made now, and maybe this starting 11 doesn't necessarily pick itself anymore in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, there'll even be the option, won't there? I think now, realistically, of if in a game things aren't working, you could even change the formation, couldn't you? I mean, Gibbs-White can obviously play well at 10. You could argue that Lowe and AU can both play out wide. So then if a striker was to come in, you could possibly go with that in a 4-2-3-1. So it just gives you that option, doesn't it? Because I think we have had some games like that, really, where, the formation hasn't worked and we haven't really had the personnel to really change it. But that's one thing that will help. But as you say, I mean, in terms of what the favoured 11 is, it's going to be tough, isn't it? I mean, it's going to be very difficult to leave out a fully fit Morgan Gibbs-White, I would say, because of everything he's going to bring us. He'll offer such a goal threat, and also in terms of setting up chances for the forward players as well. So I think it'll be almost impossible to leave him on the bench for that long. So somebody then will have to drop out one day. I mean, Smith's playing really well at the moment, and to be fair, Grimes and Fulton haven't done a lot wrong either. So it's Cooper does have a bit of a problem, but it's a nice problem to have rather than thinking, who am I going to pick, which I think was happening during the final years of our time in the Premier League, where you didn't know who to pick because nobody was really doing a lot. Whereas now I think there's going to be people on the bench who were a bit unlucky to be there.
Yeah, and as ever, is the revolving door of football, Gito. There'll be, I'm sure, one or two players heading the other way as well. I mentioned Liam Cullen already, perhaps maybe looking at the likes of Declan John as well. Do you expect there to be just fringe players that we don't want or need necessarily at the moment to be heading out, or do you see any bids coming in from our star players, God forbid Chelsea recalling Mark Gehi or something like that, or anything of that ilk which could harm our chances going forward?
Well, looking at the way Chelsea are playing at the moment, they could probably use Gay in the team. But you'd hope that the really good players that we've got on loan will be able to stay, and that clubs like Chelsea see the long-term benefit of allowing Gay to stay here and potentially get us promoted, which would be a heck of a feather in his cap. And a heck of an experience for him. And in terms of the permanent players we've got, I don't really know if we've got any left that would entice kind of the big clubs to come in with big money in the way that they would have been tempted with Joe Rodon, for example, or McBurney and Dan James in the past before that. I think we've cashed in on all of those real potential big earners for us. Somebody like IU, I can't see anybody coming in from before the summer. And from the perspective of the players themselves, unless an amazing offer came in, you'd have to wonder why they'd want to leave right now. We're playing so well. We're in such a good position. The players seem to be very confident and loving their football again. Swansea's a good place to be right now if you're a footballer. So I'm touch wood and all that, but I'm not enormously concerned about losing players in January, despite what Cooper said after the match the other day about that being the priority, keeping players rather than bringing people in. I hope that we can survive this January with the squad intact.
Yeah, here. Well, we'll keep an eye on that through the podcast through the month and keep updating it as and when anything happens, or we just see one of these bloody in the know accounts pop up on Twitter who just gets created for transfer windows, I think. So we're going to look ahead now to the fixtures. We've got a break from the league this weekend, Steve, and it's the FA Cup third round. We had a brief discussion on Twitter the other day about it. A great chance, twofold really. It's a great chance for some of the fringe players to get a game. where they may not have been playing before. But also, with Latibaudiere getting injured before kick-off, Bennett being injured the week before, it's a chance for us to give our players a rest as well. Some of the players who played a hell of a lot of football this season already.
Yeah, I think this little break is definitely coming at a good time with those injuries. I mean, you'd like to think some of them will be back in a couple of weeks' time when we play Barnsley. And obviously, the fact that we've got this cup game now, I think this is a year where I'm really not bothered about the cup. I mean, the fact that there's no crowds, there's probably not a lot of money to be had in it. And obviously, it's such a packed schedule. You just think, you know what, it really isn't that important. Obviously, I would like us to avoid, being beaten by a League Two side. But, I think the most important thing is that we give minutes to some of the players that probably need it. I mean, you look at Gibbs White now, could be the perfect example. He can now play and build himself up to some match sharpness. I mean, I don't know what the George Byers situation is. But if he's close, then hopefully he can get some minutes. You're looking at Routledge and Garrick. I mean, they've barely played all season, so there's a chance for them. Liam Cullen, if he's recovered from the virus, hopefully he has. Get well soon to him. But then you're looking at maybe one or two youngsters playing as well, and obviously the likes of Stephen Bender. So, yeah, I think that this is coming at quite a nice time for us, and hopefully one or two of the players that haven't played a great deal will show that maybe they deserve some more minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you mentioned not wanting to go out to a League Two team. It won't be the first time this season, Gitto, that we'd have gone out to a League Two team, and the first time round it didn't cause us too much long-lasting harm. But of course, crazy times, crazy circumstances surrounding the whole football restart. Would you be disheartened if we went out in the third round?
Yes, I'd be disheartened. I don't think I see it as the end of the world by any means, but I think just because of the opposition that we're playing, we could do without going out to Stevenage. I mean, that it's worth pointing out just how bad they are. I mean, they're just hovering above the League Two relegation zone at the moment on goal difference, and there are some chronic teams in League Two this season. Some there which are just focused on staying alive, and rather than survival, in a footballing sense. And Stevenage probably fit into that category. They've had an awful year. In fact, no, they've picked up fewer points in 2020 than any other team in the Football League. So that tells you something. Just 22 points collected from the 32 matches that they've played this in the last calendar year. They're chronic. They're really, really bad. I know they've actually had 2 wins recently, so the form has picked up slightly, but still they've had a real nightmare year, Stevenage, and the last thing you want is an embarrassment. And going out to a team in Stevenage's situation would be an embarrassment for us. And it's even if you make wholesale changes and it's not the first team players on the pitch. You don't want that negativity kind of infiltrating the squad when things are going so well elsewhere. So, it wouldn't be the end of the world if we go out, but that kind of embarrassment doesn't help in any way, shape, or form. So, ideally, even with the changes, I'd hope that we'd be too good for Stevenage and that we'd be able to avoid the banana skin.
Yeah, Steve, so what sort of players would you be featuring in this game then, in terms of actual personnel? Would you be interested or intrigued by any tweaks that Cooper may try out or look at for this game? Or would you think just, horses for courses on this one and like-for-like players to fill the gaps where the first teamers are getting a rest?
Yeah, I mean, you're just looking at what youngsters are available, really. And the squad players, I would say, that have not featured so far. So you're looking at Garrick, you're looking at Routledge. If Gyökeres is still here, someone like him, Cullen, Byers if he's fit, Gibbs White if can do with minutes, Bender. I suppose defensively is where we got the issue because we got those few injuries, haven't we? So one or two of them may have to play. But, I think in general you're looking at those people that need minutes, really.
Yeah, definitely. So go on then, finish that off with a score prediction for us for that game.
I think we'll come through it. I think we'll win 1-0.
1-0. Okay. Gitto, what about you?
I'd like to think that even with the changes we make, we can win 2-0 and hopefully have a reasonably comfortable afternoon. I'm hoping. Interesting. I say interesting. It's not an interesting fact at all. It's a boring fact. Before we stop talking about Stevenage, this weekend's meeting is a clash between the only two teams in the entire Football League who have never in their history finished second in any league that they've played in. So that's my boring stat contribution to this week's pod.
I think that's incredible. The fact that there are two clubs that have never done it as well is in 100-odd years we've not done it. How old is Stevenage? Are they probably looking at that sort of age as well? Are they?
They've only been in the league about 10 years, haven't they?
Yeah, and they've only existed since the 70s.
Have they really? Okay.
Yeah. So we go back way further.
Yeah. It was still 50-odd years, but yeah, absolutely. It's
we finished in every single league position from 1 to 24, apart from second, which is really, really random.
Well, there's never been a better year to put that right.
Yeah. We always either finish first or third when we're going for promotion. We went up once after finishing sixth through the playoffs, but other than that, it's always either in first or more often than not third.
It'd be interesting actually to see if Emi Buendia is picked up from Norwich in January, as is being rumoured, because that will have a direct effect on the chances of anyone catching or overtaking Norwich, won't it really? I mean, he's a star player and he's hot on form at the moment.
Yeah, he scored a lovely goal yesterday as well.
Oh, beautiful.
It was a long ball over the top of it and then first time volley. A stunning goal.
Yeah, he's watched it, hasn't he? He's done. We know he's a cracking player. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see because they will, they'll obviously be tested. Someone will come in and test the water, and will they be able to replace someone of his quality? No matter how much money they get, really, it's going to be having to be spent because people will know they've got it. But no, it will have a direct impact on us and teams around the top half of the championship, so it will be interesting to see. As for the game on the weekend, the Stevenage game, I think I think I'll go with Gitto on this. I think a 2-0 Swans win, which is worrying in the sense that I'm looking back up our predictions, and whenever we've all agreed on a result, it's not actually gone necessarily the way we thought it would.
It wouldn't be the first time that we've slipped up against,
No, it wouldn't be the first time this season. I mean, we all predicted a Bournemouth win when we drew. We all predicted the Swans win against Sheffield Wednesday when we drew. Just looking up here. So it is certainly not something we've covered ourselves in glory with previously. We've got the results not necessarily the right way around. But there we go. So we've all gone for a Swans win on that one. Are we going to have a podcast then before the following game? As I scurry around for my fixture list. Yeah, it's the week after, isn't it?
Got Barnsley, and we
we will.
Sky.
We will. That's a full 7 days afterwards as well. So we'll get a podcast in between Stevenage and Barnsley. So we won't bother previewing Barnsley for now. What does leave me time to say and reiterate what I said at the top of the podcast. Thank you ever so much to everyone who contributed towards the fund for the JackCast. And like you say, any excess monies raised through that will be put out on Twitter as a suggestion for local charities that you feel would most beneficial for it. And we will be giving that money as we say, over to charity. So thank you so much from myself, Steve, and Gitto. Hope you enjoyed. If you know someone who can't get it on any of these streaming platforms still, despite us being back on Podbean, do let us know, because we should now be back fully accessible and fully available to you. So subscribe and have them automatically download onto your iPhones or whatever you listen to it on. So thank you very much. All these for me to say is join us again next week. Keep an eye on the Twitter feed where we'll be updating it, like I say, with Battle Jacks and segments of the show. And no doubt Dan will take this opportunity to put in my unpopular opinion this week as well, just so he publicises the the amount of hatred that can come my way. I maintain that Gito has to go one better next time round, but he's going to find it hard pressed, I'm sure, to hold an opinion as controversial as that one. But for now, from myself, Steve, and Gito, thanks for listening. Bye bye.